It's great to have you with us on this Monday morning. Let's begin with the latest on that fatal shooting accident involving Alec Baldwin on the set of a movie in New Mexico. Baldwin fired a prop gun, killing the film's director of photography, Helena Hutchens, and wounding director Joel Souza. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer is in New Mexico with more on the investigation.
Savannah and Vicky, good morning. No charges have been filed. No arrests have been made. The sheriff's department here is still trying to figure out exactly what happened on a set that should not have any live ammunition. Meantime, we're learning more about the minutes before, during, and after the shooting.
This morning, new details into the deadly shooting at this New Mexico movie set involving Alec Baldwin that led to the death of cinematographer Helena Hutchens. A search warrant released overnight painting a picture of what happened inside this building. After a prop gun was declared safe, Baldwin was sitting on a wooden pew during rehearsal, drawing his weapon and pointing the revolver towards the camera lens. Director Joel Souza, who was wounded, says he was looking over the shoulder of Helena when he heard what sounded like a whip and then loud pop.
We've had 2 people shot on a movie set accidentally.
Witnesses say Helena was shot in the chest, complained about her stomach, couldn't feel her legs, and began to stumble backwards. 2 days after her tragic accidental death, Baldwin seen embracing her husband and young son. Court documents reveal it was Dave Halls, the film's assistant director, who said the prop firearm was a cold gun, indicating there were no live rounds.
We were rehearsing and it went off and I ran out.
NBC News has learned safety concerns, including multiple previous misfires of the same prop gun Baldwin used, led several crew members to walk off the set hours before the accident. The film's production company says it was not made aware of any official complaints. Margaret Gall is a prop maker who says Halls did not maintain a safe working environment on a previous project they worked on together.
He did not have any care whatsoever to those conditions in any of our experiences, and especially not in my experiences.
24-year-old Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was in charge of weapons on the set in New Mexico. She recently discussed her experience on a podcast.
By all means, I'm still learning. I think loading blanks was like the scariest thing to me because I was like, oh, I don't know anything about it.
Hollywood gathered overnight to mourn a life taken too soon.
Savannah and Vicky, NBC News has reached out to Dave Halls and Hannah Gutierrez-Reed for comment, but we have not heard back. Meantime, the production on the set of Rust has wrapped pending the sheriff's investigation. Back to you guys.
All right, Miguel, thank you for that report. And now, as police investigate the shooting, the film industry is mourning one of its own. 42-year-old Helena Hutchens was a respected cinematographer who leaves behind a husband and a 9-year-old son. NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin has more on Helena's incredible life.
Good morning, guys. Friends and colleagues of Helena Hutchens describe her passion for cinema and a work ethic that allowed her to excel in a difficult field. Sympathy and outrage from friends and former colleagues in the close-knit film industry, struggling to make sense of a senseless death.
I see myself in those pictures. I see every camera woman I've ever seen. I see every crew person who's ever done the regular 14-hour days, 18-hour days.
A cinematographer and director of photography, Helena Hutchens found success in a highly competitive field, traditionally dominated by men.
To work with somebody that's that collaborative and who never, ever thought of herself as better than anyone on that set.
Originally from Ukraine, Hutchens grew up on a Soviet military base, falling in love with film at a young age. She worked as an investigative reporter in Europe before coming to Los Angeles to study cinematography. She was named a rising star in 2019 by American Cinematographer magazine, thanks in part to a growing list of feature film credits. Still, she was also known for extending a helping hand to others hoping to break into Hollywood.
Her human connection was incredible, and I think in the film industry, which is extremely competitive, this is where it's really important to have this human connection.
Beyond her professional accomplishments, those who knew her best say they treasured her spirit and caring heart. Her husband asking for privacy, posting this heartbreaking photo. Helena inspired us all with her passion and vision, and her legacy is too meaningful to encapsulate in words. She was my role model, Helena's sister Svetlana writes. She was the brightest person I've ever known. My friend, support no matter what happened, never judge me or anyone.
It's so unfair.
Colleagues in the industry gathering at an emotional memorial in New Mexico Saturday. Actors John Hamm and John Slattery there to pay tribute. Alec Baldwin, who accidentally fired the fatal shot, seen embracing Helena's husband, Matt, writing, "My heart is broken for her husband, their son, and all who knew and loved Helena."
Helena's husband also thanked her friends and mentors at the American Film Institute, where she studied. AFI has established a scholarship in her name to support aspiring female cinematographers. He asked anyone seeking to honor her memory to donate to that fund. Guys,
just heartbreaking. Aaron, thank you so much. Now in Washington, the clock is ticking for congressional Democrats to strike a deal on President Biden's top legislative wish. It's a big budget spending bill with money for fighting climate change and to fund new social programs. Now leadership is signaling a deal might be done. NBC News White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell has the latest.
This morning, the president as deal maker, opening his personal home in Delaware for a strategy session, trying to wrap up his sweeping agenda. Security spotted Sunday as Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and pivotal moderate Democrat Joe Manchin were invited to negotiate on climate and other provisions. Speaker Pelosi says the work is nearly done.
We've 90% of the bill agreed to and written. We just have some of the last decisions to be made.
Disagreements among Democrats forced big changes. What had been a $3.5 trillion package was cut down to under $2 trillion for programs like paid family leave, health care, and universal pre-kindergarten. Plus, lawmakers expect to spend another $1 trillion on roads and bridges with a delayed bipartisan infrastructure bill. Pelosi predicts both to finally pass this week.
Both of those things will happen in the next week.
That's the plan.
Republicans have raised alarm bells about a flood of new spending when consumer prices for gas and food are already high. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen.
We are going through a period of inflation that's higher than Americans have seen in a long time, and it's something that's obviously a concern and worrying them, but we haven't lost control.
The mood of the country playing out in the final stretch of the Virginia governor's race. Democrat Terry McAuliffe calling in Barack Obama.
We're at a turning point right now.
Polling shows McAuliffe and Republican Glenn Youngkin locked in a tight race after Biden won Virginia by 10 points. With Democrats fighting to keep the state blue, the president will be back to campaign tomorrow.
That was White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell reporting. And now President Biden leaves for Europe on Thursday for summit meetings with key world allies. Democrats hope to have all of this wrapped up by then. We'll keep you posted. Now, thousands of Americans living in the Pacific Northwest are waking up to no power this morning. A supercharged storm known as a bomb cyclone slammed the West Coast with heavy winds, flash flooding, and mudslides. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa joins us now from San Francisco. Hi, Emily. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, for months, this drought-stricken state has been hoping for rain, and now they've got it. But to this degree, it's proving problematic. The bomb cyclone turning deadly overnight, killing 2 people inside a vehicle when a tree fell on top of them.
Overnight, the brunt of the bomb cyclone arrived, hammering the Pacific Northwest in a historic fashion. 41 million people in the path of what forecasters are calling the most powerful storm ever recorded off the West Coast. Just outside of Seattle, 2 people tragically killed when a tree landed on their vehicle. Near Tobin, California, landslides wreaking havoc on this typically picturesque highway. Burn scars from record-breaking wildfires carving out pathways for debris to flow.
The debris flow is a concern as well, but also down trees are a huge concern, down power lines. Even if a tree doesn't land on your house per se.
Whipping winds up to 65 miles per hour, tearing down scaffolding in San Francisco. Whistling through the Golden Gate Bridge. and toppling trees onto homes.
Basically, the whole roof is collapsed and exposed to the weather on the inside.
In Santa Clara, heavy rains drenching the field during Sunday Night Football as the Indianapolis Colts beat the 49ers 30-18 in Levi Stadium. For months, California farmers have hoped for rain, gripped by one of the worst droughts on record. Sacramento has not seen a drop since March, but this kind of rain, falling more than an inch an hour in some areas, is proving disastrous.
A week ago, we were saying the drought, we've got no water, we're running out of water, we've got to have more water. And here we are a week later going, too much water.
Evacuations ordered in areas at greatest risk, but some opting to wait out the storm, praying they'll be spared.
And the bomb cyclone hammering residents here in San Francisco. Some areas seeing winds up to 65 miles per hour, wave heights up to 40 feet, and in nearby mountains, we're talking about 16 inches of rain since the storm began. Savannah.
All right, Emily Aketa, thanks so much. Stay dry and safe. Now, Missouri also had extreme weather this weekend. The state was pounded with quarter-inch sized hail, and tornadoes ripped through northern parts of the state, leaving significant damage. Also, if you were with us last hour, you know a big storm is forming that meteorologist Bill Cairns is going to tell us about. Hey, Bill.
Hey, so you heard her mention bomb cyclone, so you're going to hear that term more and more. It's kind of like a little catchphrase. All a bomb cyclone means is it's a storm that rapidly forms. It has to meet a certain criteria for how quickly it forms. And so that's what happened in the Pacific Northwest, and now we're going to see that happen again with a new storm on the East Coast. And a lot of nor'easters do this, and this is going to be a typical like a nor'easter-type storm, but thankfully it's not in the wintertime. This is going to be all rain because it's too warm. So we have two storms, the one that produced those tornadoes in Missouri last night, and then we have a new storm developing off the coastline of near Savannah and Charleston. These two are going to combine to create a big old storm near Long Island and southern New England tomorrow. So for today, 16 million people at risk. We do have a chance from severe weather from Charlotte to Roanoke to Raleigh. And then in anticipation of the heavy rain later tonight and all day Tuesday into Wednesday morning, New York City to Boston, all of coastal areas of New Jersey, much of Rhode Island, and even areas of Connecticut, 31 million people are in flash flood watches. And this is how much rain's expected, at least 2 to 4 inches of rain. So this will be the heaviest rain event since that epic historic flood from Hurricane Ida in the New York City area. So we'll be watching closely to see how the drainage systems and the subways handle a quick 2 to 4 inches later tonight and tomorrow morning. On top of that, we also have to deal with wind problems. This storm will be strong enough for some pretty high wind watches from Boston to Providence to Nantucket and areas down on the coast. So 65-mile-per-hour winds will be possible in areas in the islands. And this is the predicted wind gust. Remember, the leaves are still on the trees in southern New England, so we will see some power outages likely and some down tree limbs and maybe even trees themselves. So this is going to be quite the storm, Savannah. We haven't had a big storm like this in the Northeast in a little while. It's a little early for a nor'easter, but all rain, no snow this time.
Bill, I got to tell you some news that's probably going to make you a little jealous. I am headed out on an assignment after the show. It's taking me to Miami, where I actually think it's raining, but tomorrow it'll be nice. But I'll miss this.
All right, I'll miss you, and
I'm back Wednesday. No big deal. All right, Bill. See you soon.
All right, good luck.
Now, millions of children could be approved for a COVID vaccine shot before the holiday season. On Tuesday, the FDA Advisory Committee is set to review vaccine data from Pfizer for kids ages 5 to 11. Now, according to Pfizer, the highly anticipated doses reduce the risk of a child developing symptomatic COVID by nearly 91%. NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has the latest.
For 28 million school-aged children here in the U.S., the first dose of the Pfizer vaccine could be available as soon as next week.
It's entirely possible, if not very likely, that vaccines will be available for children from 5 to 11 within the first week or two of November.
That's because tomorrow an FDA panel of vaccine experts will vote on whether to recommend Pfizer's kid-sized dose for emergency authorization. FDA scientists releasing a positive analysis of Pfizer's vaccine data ahead of the vote, stating the benefits outweigh its risks for use in children 5 to 11 years of age. Among the more than 2,200 children in the first round of Pfizer's trial, there were no cases of severe COVID and no cases of myocarditis or pericarditis, two rare heart conditions previously linked to the vaccine in some teenagers. Some common yet mild side effects were reported after the second dose, like pain at the injection site, fatigue, and headache. But Pfizer's data shows their kid-sized dose was more than 90% effective at preventing symptomatic COVID infection. If the FDA signs off, the final decision rests with the CDC. The Biden administration says it's ready to ship out doses once it gets the final go-ahead.
The administration is working on the operations and the logistics, so as soon as we have both the FDA authorization and the CDC recommendations, there will be vaccine out there so children can start rolling up their sleeves.
That was Gabe Gutierrez. Thank you so much for that report. We're learning new information this morning now about at-home COVID testing kits here in the U.S. The FDA says it's overhauling the process to get those kits approved to bring down the cost for Americans. The announcement comes just weeks after the Biden administration announced it will be investing $1 billion into at-home kits. It also comes just a month after the president called on the Labor Department to mandate vaccines or weekly COVID tests for companies with 100 employees or more. NBC News correspondent Heidi Presbella joins us now with more on her latest report. Heidi, good morning. So what does this overhauling process really look like for at-home COVID testing kits, and how soon are we going to see prices go down? That's obviously a huge barrier here.
Yes, Savannah, FDA is essentially streamlining its process for approving the tests, and NBC has also learned exclusively that this is part of a much broader federal push to help testing companies across the regulatory approval finish line. So the National Institutes of Health is now going to spend $70 million, Savannah, to help companies with the potential for large-scale manufacturing to essentially push them over that finish line for approval, for expedited FDA approval. This is something, Savannah, that public health officials have really been clamoring for. NIH, FDA, CDC, HHS, all of these federal agencies will work together to identify manufacturers of high-quality tests and then essentially support them with the data necessary to get approval.
So, Heidi, let's talk about the impact here and the overall goal for President Biden. What impact does this have on his vaccine and testing mandate for federal employees?
Well, federal officials are hoping that this really dramatically increases the number of at-home tests available to the public and lowers the cost. Now, that's really important as Biden prepares to issue this new rule mandating either vaccines or testing. They're hoping that most employers will mandate the vaccine. But, Savannah, for those who won't, or can't, they're going to have to test. And the government does not want those tests to be prohibitively expensive. They don't want them to be hard to access. And so they're hoping that all of this will really break that dam.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk about a quick stat here. Back in February, a poll was released that showed 79% of Americans were more likely to test themselves regularly if the cost of those tests was at $1. How can lowering these price points keep larger portions of the population safe from COVID? Kind of put in context again for people who have thought, I haven't tested in a long time, I got the shot. We're not focused on that as much anymore. But how could this help if people might think, hey, I don't really feel good, I could test myself, it's only going to cost me $1?
Well, that's exactly the thinking. This is not just for employers. It's not just for schools, which, by the way, are also trying to ramp up testing. It's for families who maybe want to gather over the holidays. The complaint, Savannah, really has been that the Europeans have done a far superior job of lowering costs and approving dozens of these types of tests. For instance, in the UK and Germany, there are more than 30 tests each approved there. Here, it's hardly a dozen. We even have tests that are manufactured in this country, Savannah, that are being used in Europe but not approved here. So there have been many, many members of Congress, as well as health officials, who say we need to do something about this. Well, today is the day that the administration is trying to answer those calls.
All right. Well, we are all looking forward to hearing that. Heidi Presbella, thank you so much. Let's now bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Naheed Bedelia. Dr. Bedelia is the director of the Boston University Center for Emerging Infectious Diseases Policy and Research. Dr. Bedelia, always great to have you. So we just heard Heidi report that the FDA is overhauling this approval process for at-home COVID testing kits. Remind us, why are testing kits such an important part of our fight against COVID? And do you anticipate that more people will start using these at home, not just, to Heidi's point, in businesses or schools, but at home for their families if they do become cheaper?
Yeah, Savannah, your discussion with Heidi covered it perfectly, which is that during pandemics,
tests are most effective when they are affordable and they're accessible. And we've failed miserably here, whether it be from the early sort of failures of CDC to try to get testing out there so we can get a handle of how widespread the disease was, to delays by the FDA to try to get testing approved. Here's what testing does. Testing allows you to know if you're sick or not. It's helpful to find out if you're sick because you change your behavior. You can seek care earlier. We know there are many therapies that work better, such as monoclonal antibodies, if you know what your status is early. And you can change how many other people you might potentially infect because you may change your behavior if you know you're positive. And that goes to workplaces, it goes to schools. What's happened, is that after we've discovered that there can be a significant number of breakthrough infections where there might be transmission even among vaccinated people, again, much smaller rate than people who are unvaccinated, there's been a crunch, right? As schools open, there's been a need to try to get testing in there to reduce the number of clusters. Schools are pursuing this strategy of test to stay if a kid has been exposed, and that's going to allow children to stay potentially in schools longer. For all those reasons, including the holiday travel, testing is important. But what's happened is that there's been a crunch to the point where in most pharmacies in the U.S., you can only purchase a certain amount if those tests are in stock. And I think the availability of more tests on market will include more competition, hopefully bring that price point down. It will have a big impact. And here's the other last point I want to make, Savannah, is that as other therapies come out, like the oral antiviral that we've been talking about, knowing your test status is important so they can pick up the phone and potentially get access to those therapies as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, I want to ask you about kids and vaccines because the FDA Advisory Committee is meeting tomorrow to discuss those shots. How do vaccines for kids in that specific age group, 5 to 11, help keep COVID cases low in the U.S.? What's the impact of that particular age group getting this shot? And what should parents know before getting their kids vaccinated, especially if somebody's a little bit nervous to get their kid vaccinated as soon as it comes on the market?
Yeah, very good points. And here's what we've seen with the Delta wave. Kids are making up a larger percentage. A larger percentage of kids are sort of ending up in the hospital, partly because they are the unvaccinated and a highly transmissible variant that's bound currently. And not only that, but you've seen clusters basically shut down schools. And that impacts the health of kids, the operations of the schools. But of course, that means parents have to keep those children at home and then figure out what they're going to do with the period of time the kids are quarantined. And so for all those reasons, keeping kids healthy is going to be good for their health, the health of teachers and adults around them, multi-generational families. This is what we know. The Pfizer's data on 1/3 the dose shows very good safety and not really that many incidences of that concern, the myocarditis, pericarditis, and it's highly efficacious against symptomatic disease. So if you're concerned, I would know that the FDA is taking a very close look, and there's good certainty that these are effective and safe. Get your kids vaccinated ahead of the holidays.
All right, Dr. Naheed Bedelia, always great to see you. Thank you so much. We're back with new documents from Facebook revealing more critical findings from the social media giant's own internal research. The documents are part of an enormous trove of data turned over to Congress and the SEC by a former Facebook employee, Frances Haugen, whose testimony earlier this month sent shockwaves around the world. NBC's Jacob Ward has more.
Facebook's internal research shows that for years, the company has studied practically every social ill that plagues its platform, from human trafficking to threats of violence. And Facebook appears to be at war with itself as to what should be done, as some of its researchers loudly sound the alarm.
They are making dramatic recommendations about changes to the company, but it doesn't seem as if the company has changed. Why is that?
We do listen to the researchers, and first, the fundamental question is, why would you have a research team in the first place? We have those researchers, and we've built a team now of more than 1,000 individuals, most of them with PhDs, who work on researching the experience that people have around our products and our different features for only one reason, and that's to make those products and features better.
But researchers post internal messages with titles like, "Does Facebook reward outrage?" "Carol's Journey to QAnon," and "We are responsible for viral content." One study found that when we post misinformation, it's more likely to be shared. And that can lead to real-world harm. Another study found that for some politicians and news outlets, Facebook's sharing system is leading them to post more divisive and sensationalist content. And the specifics of what some researchers say internally doesn't always match up with the image the company has projected.
We've gone from
proactively identifying and taking down about 20% of the hate speech on the service, to now we are proactively identifying, I think it's about 94% of the hate speech that we end up taking down.
According to Facebook studies, less than 5% is acted upon. Bickert says those are separate metrics, and the company is getting steadily better at spotting and removing hate speech.
Is Facebook irredeemable by its nature?
Just like you will never stop abuse in the offline world, and you'll never stop abuse in the online world, you can get better at detecting it and preventing it and curbing it.
Our thanks to Jacob Ward for that report.
We are also learning more this morning about the role of Facebook's algorithms and how they were, what they played in steering users toward extreme and conspiratorial content. According to those leaked internal documents, the company had been aware of the problem for much longer than previously known and had struggled to contain the violent communities that had grown on its platforms. NBC News senior reporter Brandy Zadrozny has been reviewing these documents. She joins us now. Good morning, Brandy. I know you are deep in it. One of your recent articles details an internal Facebook report called Carol's Journey to QAnon. Are you? Okay, great. We have you. We have you. Were you able to hear my question? What was that all about? Carol's Journey to QAnon. It sounds innocuous, but I'm sure it wasn't.
We're looking through thousands and thousands of documents. And when I saw that one, I've been covering this conspiracy theory movement on the platform for a long time. And so my eyes sort of bugged. And what I saw was pretty alarming. And that was this internal study from 2019, again, called Carol's Journey to QAnon. And it showed a test user. Basically, the researcher made up a fake user, made her a middle-aged mom. She loved Jesus. She loved Donald Trump. And it showed that within just 2 days, after she just liked some rando groups, she liked Donald Trump's Facebook page, she liked Fox News. Within 2 days, she was being pushed energetically by Facebook's own recommendation engine towards QAnon, which, we all know by now probably is this conspiracy theory community that believes, Donald Trump is a savior who was waging this secret battle against a cabal of pedophiles and Satanists. It sounds crazy, but a lot of people believe that. And a lot of people believe that in part because they were being recommended to Facebook groups that was pushing this stuff. This group had a major presence at the Capitol on January 6th. So this fake account became, in a week, a cesspool of extremist content, violence, incitement rhetoric. And this is from Facebook's own researchers. And the point is, this was a fake account. Who cares? But it mirrored what internet researchers and reporters were seeing all over the world in that time. And at the same time, Facebook was telling us that it wasn't real.
Right. And it mirrors what we saw with the Instagram, right, where Senator's office created, a fake account and then started following things about body image. And then next thing you know, it was spiraling into body dysmorphia. So talk a little bit about the leaked documents and what you think they reveal between, this idea that you could have a QAnon movement, violence, and something like COVID vaccine hesitancy. Are there links there, Brandy?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's actually one that Facebook asked itself during that time. What do these extremists, and actually Facebook calls them dangerous content communities, what is the crossover? And its own studies, again, found that there was a big crossover between anti-vaccination groups that grew during 2020 and QAnon groups. They were so confused that they couldn't even tell if QAnon had influenced the anti-vaccination beliefs because there was so much crossover. They did form a working group this year. They were trying to figure out ways to find users who had entered these groups and then take a step back and then ask themselves, what kind of pipeline was Facebook creating? They called them gateway groups. So what kind of rabbit hole was bringing together QAnon people, COVID denialists, anti-vaxxers, incels, where it's like not so obvious. It's not obvious, Nazism or terrorism groups that you can take down, but these are dangerous content groups. And what can they do about it? So far, it doesn't seem like they figured that out.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Now they have this information, they know about how these groups are intertwining and growing quickly. But what is Facebook doing? What about the role of its own algorithms? What can Facebook do? What has it done?
That's a history book. So Facebook has made, hundreds of little decisions here and there, from algorithm tweaks to policy changes to enforcement rules. It's hard to say what have they done. Let's look at this Carol experiment, though, right? So more than a year after the internal report, willing to act only after things had spiraled into a dire state. That's Facebook's own employees. Now, Facebook brings a lot of brilliant researchers on to study these things. They did the same thing with the 2020 election, with these Break the Glass initiatives. But the problem is there's a big step between research and policy, and they really only put these measures in place when we've seen great harm.
It's going to be
too late.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see what the role of lawmakers is in all of this now, Brandy. Thank you so much.
Let's now take a look at what's making news around the world this morning.
Raf Sanchez joins us now from Tel Aviv. Hey, good morning, Raf.
Vicky, Savannah, good morning. We continue to monitor that breaking news of a military coup in Sudan. A top general went on TV earlier declaring a state of emergency and announcing he's dissolving the country's government. The government says a number of protesters were shot by soldiers when they demonstrated outside army headquarters. China says it will cut its fossil fuel use to below 20% by the year 2060. The commitment comes just ahead of the COP26 climate summit in Scotland. China is the world's largest carbon emitter, and for now, it remains heavily dependent on coal, which provides more than half its energy. And finally, a sunfish almost the size of the sun. Fishermen off the coast of Morocco found a sunfish tangled in their nets that weighs around 4,000 pounds. The fish is more than 10 feet long, and marine biologists actually couldn't weigh it because they were afraid it'd break the scale. So guys, the fishermen probably not going to be able to get a souvenir picture with that one.
Yeah. Wow, those videos are incredible, though. That's massive.
I've never seen a sunfish that big. It's like this is the time of year where they're doing the big great pumpkin contests all around, but it looked like that's what it reminded me of. A pumpkin of the sea.
Yeah.
Raf Sanchez, thank you so much.
All right, welcome back. Michael Jordan is still setting records even in retirement. A pair of Air Jordans MJ wore during a game just sold at an auction for over $1.4 million, the most ever for a pair of sneakers at an auction. Jordan signed the pair of Nike Airships that he wore during his 5th game in his rookie season with the Bulls. You can see them here, and more pictures of his airness, I guess that's his nickname, wearing the iconic red Nikes during his first couple seasons in the NBA. Now, the auction price yesterday for the sneakers easily beat the previous record, which was $615,000 for, you guessed it, another pair of Air Jordans. So I don't know. If you got some money lying around, guess we can get some sneakers.
You know what's the thing, though? It's so interesting. Now the players, I feel like they wear their shoes for one game. So you get the shoe and it's pristine. But you could wear it. I don't know what you do. That's a pretty beat-up sneaker.
I know that one was. I know. Well, it's obviously from quite a while ago. But, yeah, I guess he wore them more than the once.
Yeah. All right. Well,
cool.
His airness continuing to break those records.
Massachusetts' prestigious Amherst College is ending its long-standing legacy admissions policy, which favored children of alumni. But as NBC News Now correspondent Zincle Asamoah explains, some say it's a decision that was long overdue.
The practice of legacy admissions gets a rejection letter from Amherst College.
It's been a little bit of a mixed response to the legacy change.
The elite Massachusetts school announcing Wednesday legacy applicants, those whose parents and grandparents are alumni, will no longer have preferential standing when they apply.
I had access to something called Dean's Day.
Julia's parents and grandfather attended Amherst.
I did sort of feel like it was odd that that was something that I had access to and that other students didn't have access to.
We owe it to the whole sphere of underrepresented young people to provide more opportunities.
President Martin, who was a low-income and first-generation student herself, says the change will make the admissions process more equitable. Amherst College joins others in ending preferential legacy admissions. But not every private college is giving the change a passing grade. Take Stanford, which in response to Amherst's announcement said to NBC it would maintain its, quote, holistic admissions policy. First-generation Amherst alum Natalie struggled with her transition to the school.
Knowing that your peers have had experiences that you haven't had, have attended these really rich, wealthy white gatherings that you haven't had. I think sort of keeping that legacy of legacy admissions around, I think it really just bears the mark of, I think, a lot of institutions' racist histories in the past.
The practice emerging in the 1920s amid an influx of immigrants and members of the Jewish community. But in 2021, the demographics in the country and the classroom are changing. In Amherst's newest class, 17% of freshmen are first-generation college students, and 50% are domestic students of color.
There have been a lot of initiatives around diversity and inclusion, and so removing legacy admissions feels like a very tangible step.
As legacy admissions end at one university, so a new chapter of acceptance begins for incoming college applicants.
Our thanks to Zing Clay for that report. And actually, according to a 2019 Advancing Global Higher Education study, nearly 3/4 of the most selective schools in the country use legacy preference. So it'll be interesting to see what something like that does, if that sets any type of example.
Yeah, it's one of those backdoors people talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Time for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you.
Silvana Henao joins us now. Hey, good morning, Silvana.
Good morning. PayPal is throwing cold water on reports it's in talks to buy Pinterest. The company saying today it's not pursuing a deal at this time. Last week, reports said the companies were in early discussions with PayPal, offering upwards of $70 a share for Pinterest. At that price, a deal would be the biggest ever for a social media company, topping Microsoft's $26 billion purchase of LinkedIn. You may have to wait longer for your new MacBook Pro. Early pre-orders of the 14 and 16-inch versions saw their shipping dates slip within minutes of opening last week. Now, some customers may have to wait until December, even if they pre-order them before tomorrow's official release date. Orders for custom options may not arrive until mid-December. And Warner Brothers' Dune topping the weekend box office with roughly $40 million in North America. That's according to ComScore. The film drawing well, despite also being available on HBO Max. This marks the best domestic opening for any of the studio's hybrid releases. Warner Brothers estimates Dune would have generated about 20% more in box office had it not also been streaming. Back to you.
I can't wait to see that, actually.
Yeah, it looks really
I do
good.
want
That
to see
cast
it.
looks really good. Star-studded.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to stream it at home, though, but that's good news for the box office, I guess. All right, Silvana, thank you so much.
Sure thing.
Now, this morning, the U.S. Postal Service is announcing big plans to add new facilities and extra staffing to deal with the holiday season rush, as both consumers and businesses nationwide are dealing with crippling supply chain issues.
Yeah, NBC News correspondent Carrie Sanders, joins us now from the Port of Miami. Just thinking about the shipping is getting me all tongue-twisted, Carrie.
Good morning, guys. Well, look, you see the containers stacked up behind me. They have electronics that have come in from Asia. They have clothes that has been made down in Central and South America. All here stuff that is perfect as a Christmas gift. But as we've been reporting, there are supply chain issues. In fact, many of the ships have containers like this still on the ships waiting to be offloaded around the country, and that, of course, is the problem, especially with Christmas arriving. But this morning, at least, that so-called last mile, once the containers make it to the warehouse, that last mile of getting those items from there to you, well, that is ramping up.
This morning, the nation's mail system making a major push to deliver packages on time this holiday season. The United States Postal Service announcing plans to add 45 new facilities, 112 new mail sorting machines, and 40,000 additional seasonal workers. All of it in an effort to handle more than 50 million packages a day. That's a 35% increase from last year. It's a big goal for the Postal Service, which has been plagued by delays throughout the pandemic.
The delivery is just mystical as to when things arrive where.
Mail is slow. I mailed a package to California that took about a month to get there.
Amazon, FedEx, and UPS are also hiring thousands of seasonal workers to deal with the expected record holiday rush. But some small business owners are questioning whether it will be enough to offset major supply chain issues. Thea Brown is the owner of a popular toy store in Richmond, Virginia.
I am worried that we might have to disappoint some people, not only this holiday, but and it's not going to magically go away at the first of the year.
From ports to trucks to warehouses, labor shortages, lack of capacity, and congestion are wreaking havoc on a supply chain still recovering from pandemic shutdowns. And over the weekend, disaster when 40 containers fell into the Pacific Ocean when a ship was hit by rough seas off the coast of Washington state. Later, containers on that same cargo ship, including 2 carrying hazardous materials, catching fire on board, according to the Canadian Coast Guard. The incident, just another disruption to the ongoing global jam. Here in the U.S., Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis is suggesting container ships reroute to ports in his state to help alleviate the strain on California's ports.
Some ships they're docked for an extra 5 weeks. So it'll take them an extra week to go around the Panama Canal. So you're gaining some efficiency and time there.
Well, Carrie, we just heard about some of the benefits of rerouting those cargo ships, but what about the trade-offs in that approach?
Well, aside from the cost, you don't go through the Panama Canal without paying. There's also just sheer logistics. So if they arrive here at Port Miami, Port Everglades and Fort Lauderdale, Jacksonville, Savannah, all which can handle excess capacity, unlike what we're seeing on the West Coast, you then have the additional logistics. Are there enough truckers? Are the trains? And a lot of this stuff is organized months, if not years in advance for how this all moves through the system. But logistics experts are indeed examining all of this. And if nothing else, I think what we have realized is that with 40% of the containers arriving at Long Beach and Los Angeles, the ports there, it may be an Achilles heel that revealed itself in part because of the pandemic and all of these supply chain issues that have resulted from the way the entire system has been strained, guys.
Yeah, Carrie, we have all learned so much about supply chains and the logistics that go into getting us all of our goods. And it really is that final mile, like you said.
Especially
really
as we've all been waiting on furniture, things we ordered, all that type of stuff. We've definitely seen it.
All right, Carrie, thank you so much.
The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is a powerful American symbol honoring the thousands of Americans who made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. It's guarded 24 hours a day at Arlington National Cemetery just outside of Washington, D.C.
It has been 100 years since the first unknown soldier from World War I was chosen to be laid to rest there. A group of veterans and current service members traveled to France to honor the somber occasion and to remember those who lost their lives. NBC News Now anchor Aaron Gilchrist joins us now live from northern France. Hey, good morning. This is a remarkable story, Aaron.
Hey, good morning, ladies.
So now, Aaron, this is, of course, a very important and somber anniversary. Tell us a little bit more about where you are and this connection here. We just said you're in northern France. So what's the connection to the unknown soldier, and how are they there honoring the 100-year anniversary so far away from us here at home?
Yeah, Savannah, we're in the city of Chalon-en-Champagne, which is about 2 hours outside Paris. This is where the American unknown soldier was selected 100 years ago. There were 4 American unknown soldiers brought to this city, and then an American vet who was decorated came here and selected the soldier, the casket that would go back to the United States. And the French people here at that time thought that this was a huge event. This was a big deal for them because the Americans had come to France during World War I, and as some of the citizens told me here while we've been visiting, the Americans essentially saved them. They were considered saviors in a sense when they were able to join the effort to win World War I.
Aaron, American veterans and current service members are there for this momentous occasion, 100 years. You've talked to some of them. What are they telling you this moment means for them?
The Society of the Honor Guard is the group that's here. These are mostly veterans who served at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Arlington Cemetery. They said they could not be anywhere else on the centennial of the Unknown Soldier's selection. They came here both to honor the journey that soldier took and to say thank you to the French people who have cared for soldiers who are buried here in France in American cemeteries, thousands of them. And they also wanted to have the opportunity to come here to this city to show their appreciation as well. Listen to what the president of the society told me.
We asked them for just a simple wreath ceremony on that day. They went a little bit further, and they've just opened up their doors and embraced us again as friends. It's important for us to retrace those steps so that we never forget the service and sacrifice of so many Americans and French that laid down their lives for freedom.
And Savannah and Vicky, before they leave, before that group leaves France, they will go to the Arc de Triomphe, where the French unknown soldier is buried, to pay their respects there as well.
Oh, Aaron Gilchrist, what an incredible story. What a journey. Some beautiful shots there and some amazing interviews. Thank you so much.
Thanks for bringing that story to us, Aaron.
Safe travels home.
That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.